Chinese men have entered an era of self-imposed singleness and revenge remarriages. Nowadays, young men are becoming scarce in Wux's matchmaking markets. Those of marriageable age are using this approach to push back against the distorted views of relationships and marriage prevalent today. This might sound like an exaggeration, but the steadily declining birth and marriage rates show that men are serious about this. You're hard to impress? Fine, I won't try. You don't want to talk about having children? Then we won't have any. If I can't win, I can at least avoid. I'm not denying that lower birth rates are partly due to women achieving higher education levels, but the number of men who also don't want children is just as significant. Many men are acting out of frustration. But if they keep avoiding marriage now, in 20 years, the landscape of relationships in China will surely change. Just look at South Korea and Japan. When men there stopped pursuing marriage and chose to lie flat, opt out of societal pressures, women drastically lowered their expectations for houses and dowries. Yet, men remained indifferent. Are women really willing to sacrifice their youth to pave the way for a different future? What do you think can break this cycle? Share your thoughts in the comments. Follow this channel and find your match soon. This year, 30 million older single men in China will face an epic situation. To pressure them into marrying and having children sooner, the government is trying everything. Recently, the Ministry of Civil Affairs released a draft for new marriage registration rules, which mention that in the future, marriage will no longer require a household registration. Only an ID will be needed. What does this mean? It means that from now on, two young people who like each other can literally leave a restaurant and head straight to the marriage registry office. More importantly, it allows bypassing the system. Parents demand cars, houses, and a dowry. Criticize social or economic mismatches. Now that can all be ignored. Imagine, the daughter you've raised with so much care for 20 years who hardly left the house, takes a walk around the block and comes home in the afternoon saying, "Hey, I got married. Here's my husband." It was love at first sight. I don't know how Chinese parents would react to this. If it were my daughter, I'd probably faint on the spot. Many people might think, oh, but the women are obviously at a disadvantage in this situation. Not necessarily. Imagine if it were your son. One day he comes home and, without you knowing, uses your $1 million house as collateral to marry a young girl he barely knows. You'd be devastated too. And the worst part, there's not much you can do about it. Even getting a divorce becomes complicated. The draft also mentions a 30-day cooling-off period for divorce. If either party changes their mind during this time, the divorce won't be granted. This means that if you're stuck with a problematic partner, getting out of the marriage will be much harder. Why is all this happening? It's actually a reflection of a deeper issue. Marriage and birth rates in China are hitting historic lows. Last year, the number of children in kindergartens nationwide dropped by 14,800, leaving many teachers at risk of losing their jobs due to a lack of children. China's economy is the second largest in the world, but its birth rate is among the lowest. These signs show that the population problem is urgent, and the Ministry of Civil Affairs is desperately trying to get us to marry. But have we thought about what these policies might lead to in the future? Let's break it down. The hukou system. In the past, it was necessary to present the hukou when getting married. This protected people because it clearly stated whether the other person was single or divorced. If it was a second marriage, the registration required documents related to the previous divorce, including court rulings on asset division and child custody. This helped prevent fraud or problematic marriages. Additionally, the hukou had to be obtained with parental consent, ensuring that parents were aware and could provide guidance. Now, the 30-day cooling-off period. Combining this new rule with the removal of the hukou requirement drastically lowers the cost of entering into irresponsible marriages, but increases the risks for regular people. In the past, marriage was expensive and complicated. It required a car, house, money, and approval from the parents. Now, all it takes is convincing someone and registering the marriage. And if one party wants to get a divorce later, the new rules make it much harder, as either person can block the divorce during the cooling-off period. What's the result? The cost of marriage has dropped, but the cost of divorce has increased. What does this mean in practice? Looking at other countries, examples like France show how things can go. Their divorce is extremely costly. The man not only splits the assets with his ex-wife but also pays alimony, which she can use to go on dates with her new boyfriend. In the US it's similar. Even if the wife was unfaithful when they married, the husband still has to pay alimony. It's no wonder that many American men hope their ex-wives get married to someone else quickly so they can stop paying. And despite these protective rules, the marriage rate in France has dropped to a historic low of just 3%. In the US, less than 40% of the population is married. These situations are like a bank that makes depositing easy but makes withdrawing money nearly impossible. Wouldn't you feel frustrated?
Why is it that nowadays, more and more men prefer not to look for a woman? The better the conditions, the more they stay single. This phenomenon has become more and more common. According to official statistics, in 2024, nearly 200 million people in the country will be single, including women. The ratio of single men and women is almost equal. This situation has never occurred in history. And you know what? I am one of those single men. And I can tell you, many of us are good. We have a decent education. We are hardworking. Some of us have good jobs. Others have houses and cars. And we even have great benefits at work. But still, I prefer to stay single. There are even men who, after a divorce, don't want to look for a woman again. It's not just the parents who are worried about this. The country itself is also desperate. They want young people to get married quickly, because otherwise, the control over affordable housing will tighten even more. Schools also want people to marry and have children, or else the enrollment numbers will drop and the income will shrink. But even with all this pressure, it doesn't matter. Because the reality is that I just don't want to look for a woman anymore. I don't want to date. I don't want to get married. Nowadays, that's the new normal in society. 5 years ago, if I said I didn't want to marry, I would have been criticized. My relatives and friends would have looked at me strangely. But today, things have changed. People's mindset has changed, and I fit into that. I myself am an example of that. I graduated from college. Work as a supervisor in a company. I have a good appearance. I'm capable at my job. And I'm a good person. Last week, when I went home, I was asked if I had a girlfriend. And that's when I started explaining that today's youth have no interest in marriage. Then they asked me, why don't you want to marry? With all your qualities, a good job, a good salary, why not look for a wife? And that's when I felt the need to say what I really think. And what I believe is the opinion of 85% of men my age. When I graduated, my first thought was to make money and help my parents pay off their college debt. When that was paid off, I thought I would get married. But now, I realize it doesn't make sense. I've lost faith in women. Although my salary is good, I've bought a house and a car. I don't see the need to get married. Honestly, what would marriage even mean? Marriage would simply lose the meaning of life. And you know what else? Today, my life goal is to be an advocate of not marrying. I want to make money while I'm young. And when I'm older, I want to buy a motorhome, travel wherever I want, explore remote and beautiful places, cook my own food, and rest whenever I feel like it. I want time to show the world what I've achieved, and for the world to leave its footprints. That's the life I want. I'm not interested in dating. I'm not interested in relationships. That's not the life I'm looking for. In fact, I've dated before. During holidays, my friends often invited me to travel. I even went to Thailand. I've traveled to many places. And every time I went, my ex-girlfriend would buy expensive things. And I always paid. We were together for a year and a half. And in the end, my salary was practically all spent. I worked hard and always used my credit card. One time, my ex-girlfriend wanted a designer bag worth thousands. But I didn't pay, because I thought it was a waste. I didn't want to feed her vanity. That same afternoon, she told me she wanted to break up. And that was it. After that, I realized how meaningless all of that was. It was all just an illusion. And with the way the world is today, after so much living, do I really care about looking for a woman? Looking for a woman would just tie me down. The cost of living is so high. The debt from the house and car is heavy. What's the point of living in debt for a lifetime? Honestly, I believe that not marrying and not having children is the true happiness. When I say this, I realize how much society has really changed. And I've changed with it. It's funny, because back in the day, I believed love was beautiful. And marriage was a blessing. But today, talking to myself, I see how much I've changed. And no wonder, more and more men in society prefer not to look for a woman. What do you think about this phenomenon? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.
今天小张就来给大家聊一下这个话题。
The acceleration of the process of male deresponsibilization, the collapse of the simp economy, and young people's pursuit of equal emotional relationships. Today I, Xiaozhong, will talk to you about this topic. As always, don't forget to like and follow, and let's continue the conversation. In recent years, it's not hard to notice that the role of men in emotional relationships is undergoing profound changes. They have started rejecting being captured by the phrase paying for love, and are increasingly angry with the model of relationships based on unconditional giving. Holidays like Valentine's Day, Goddess Day, and Christmas, which should originally be moments for both partners to celebrate together, have gradually evolved into an obligation for men to buy expensive gifts for women. Is this situation normal? Why have men come to this point? At this point, I'd like to ask you a question. Do you think men should be required to buy expensive gifts for women during the holidays? If you agree, say yes in the comments so we can see how many people agree. Does this way of expressing emotions really reflect equality and respect between men and women? In fact, this unequal relationship model has made more and more men feel angry and dissatisfied. They've begun calling for equality in relationships, rejecting being the one who always gives without receiving anything in return. Cosmetics, flowers, diamond rings, which were once seen as symbols of love, no longer hold the mythical status they once had in the eyes of men. Marriage and parenthood, which were once considered responsibilities young people must bear, are no longer shackles for them. According to observations, the process of male deresponsibilization is irreversible. More and more men are realizing that pleasing others is not as important as taking care of themselves. They no longer want to be bound by these unreasonable demands and have begun rejecting the role of simp, no longer accepting one-sided emotional models. On social media, whenever there is so-called advice on how to chase a goddess, the comments are almost always full of questions and criticism. Men have begun actively advocating for gender equality, calling for mutual effort, and bravely expressing their dissatisfaction. Under the pressure of capitalist marketing, men have long played the role of silent providers, enduring the increasing demands of women regarding their criteria for choosing a partner. This led to many men realizing that even if they worked themselves to the bone to earn money, they still couldn't cover the couple's expenses. Life was becoming increasingly difficult. There is an economic term internationally known as the labor support ratio, which reflects how many people one person's income can support. In Germany, a person's income can support 6.8 people, in the US it is 4.8, in South Korea it is 3.8, and in China, this number is only 1.1. This means that in China it is very difficult for one person's income to support anyone else besides themselves. Society is demanding more and more from men. They need to have a house, a car, savings, and still work hard to build their careers. Additionally, they must be gentlemen, treat women with care, and spend money. Middle-aged men are expected to ensure the quality of life for the entire family, bear everyone's expectations, hand over their entire salary, be romantic, and endure all hardships. However, all this irrationality will eventually be rejected. According to official data from the Ministry of Civil Affairs, the number of marriages in China has fallen sharply in the past 2 years. In the first 3 quarters of this year, the number of marriage registrations was only 4.747 million, a decrease of 943,000 compared to the previous year, the lowest number in 40 years. Among the young people aged 25 to 29, half have not married yet. It is expected that by the end of this year, the number of single people in China will exceed 300 million. Late marriage or choosing not to marry has already become a common phenomenon. This has not only worried the older generation but also left experts puzzled. Some experts believe that today's young people are too focused on their own pleasure, pursuing personal development and happiness to the point of irresponsibility. But I, Xiaozhong, believe exactly the opposite. The current generation is truly the most responsible. They understand that the goal of an ordinary person's life is to build a family and a career, but many young people today feel that their career is not yet stable enough to provide a favorable environment for future generations, so they choose not to marry. In the past, the trend was to marry and have children early, but now times have changed. People are more focused on personal growth and freedom of choice. Marriage, once seen as a task, has now become a heavy responsibility. Maternity wards closing, lack of demand for infant formula, empty seats in kindergartens, surplus teachers, these are all signs of the shrinking marriage and relationship economy. In the past, people were eager to marry because the cost was low. Today, marrying means working diligently, not allowing yourself to get sick, not losing your job, and not spending too much. Every small failure can extinguish the desire for marriage, leading to a sharp decline in the quality of life. Therefore, whether young people choose to marry or not, there is no right or wrong. The older generation really doesn't need to worry too much. Every era has its own concepts of marriage and relationships, and today's young people are more independent, rational, and have the right to choose their own lifestyle and emotional model. I believe that the process of male deresponsibilization and the collapse of the simp economy are inevitable results of the changing times.
The marriage and dating market is about to undergo a major transformation. The market for women and the puppy economy are heading toward a complete collapse. On one hand, the events surrounding the bubble have caused many men to wake up. On the other hand, Chinese men are starting to abandon the domestic marriage and dating market, opting to look abroad for women who are gentle and possess qualities such as kindness and ambition. These values have now replaced properties and cars, becoming the new capital for men in the dating market. Chinese men seeking foreign wives is no longer a rarity, but instead is becoming a widespread trend. Data from 2019 showed that, for the first time, the number of Chinese men going abroad surpassed the number of foreign women coming to China. This trend not only continues, but is growing stronger. More and more men are realizing that marrying foreign women does not require high dowries, and these women are more willing to work together with men to build a life. For example, Anna, a woman from Russia, married her Chinese husband, and together they opened a cafe in a small town in China. She said she was attracted to his diligence and kindness and appreciated the family values of Chinese culture. She commented, "Haiba, here I feel equality and respect, something I rarely experienced in my home country." Additionally, Chinese men are beginning to grow tired of the inequalities in the traditional marriage market. In the past, many men were burdened with high dowries and the pressure to buy a house and a car, which made it difficult to marry. Modernization has made women more independent, which is initially seen as a sign of progress. However, with the influence of some extreme feminist views, some women have started to demand rights without taking on corresponding responsibilities. In this context, many men are feeling increasing pressure and a sense of injustice. Zhang from Hangzhou is one such example. After several frustrations in the domestic dating market, he chose to marry a Vietnamese woman. He said, "She doesn't demand that I have a car or a house, she just wants us to work together." This simple happiness is something I've never found in the dating market here. The image of Chinese men internationally has also improved, now being associated with diligence, kindness, and responsibility. Compared to the libertine behavior of many Western men, the sexism in Japan and Korea, or the patriarchy in the Middle East, Chinese men stand out as softer and more well-suited. For foreign women, Chinese men have become ideal partners. In Russia, a woman stated that she admired her Chinese husband's dedication and care for the family, saying, "What makes me happy is how good he is to me." This wave of change is already deeply impacting the core of the marriage and dating market in China. With the increasing number of men choosing to go abroad, high dowries and unequal marriage ideas are gradually being challenged. In regions like Guangxi and Yunnan, more than 80% of men are marrying women from abroad. This not only has the potential to improve the gender imbalance, but could also transform the roles of men and women in the marriage market. Men are no longer just economic providers, they are now seeking real partners and equal relationships. With this trend, we can imagine that the future of the dating market will be more focused on individual qualities and true compatibility between people, rather than being based on material conditions. While this change may present a challenge for some, it represents a healthy step towards societal development as a whole. As ideas about marriage from both domestic and international perspectives merge, we expect to see a more open and equal dating environment. This shift is not only a challenge to traditional marriage ideals, but also a reflection of international cultural exchange. Through these intercultural marriages, mutual understanding and respect between countries are deepened. In the future, we can expect a dating market that values emotional connection and personal qualities over material conditions. If this trend continues, the gender imbalance will be significantly improved, and practices such as high dowries and the puppy economy will begin to disappear. In the end, what do you think about the trend of Chinese men marrying foreign women? And if you're still single, be careful not to fall into the emotional traps the dating market may offer. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. See you in the next video.